Hello, welcome to my channel of YouTube, and today I will talk about teaching by principles or principles of language learning and teaching. They are divided in three principles. The first is cognitive principles, and the second is affective principles, and the third is linguistic principles. The first, cognitive principles. They related mainly to mental and intellectual functions. The first principle is automaticity. Here, the children learn observing subconsciously without analyze the form of language with an inductive process. Here, we as teachers use meaningful learning live in the native language country. This is very important to use the automaticity. Focus on the purpose of language, not in the form. The meaningful use is unit with authentic context. And we can talk about some classroom implication because this podcast is to teachers and to learners too. So, the classroom implication. The first is a too heavily centered on the formal aspect of language as grammatical content can block the fluency. So you can't use this in your class. Or use but a little bit only. Use of the language, lessons in class, functional purpose. The focus is in the functional purpose, and the lessons in the class, they can be with the use of the language. Students gain more language competence in this way. And third, exercise patience. Slowly help. The teacher have to slowly help to the students. Second, meaningful learning. Better long-term retention for the students. Children associate sounds, words, structures, and discourse elements with that relevant and important in their daily knowledge and survival. Uh, the key the key words are very important in this principle. This is opposed to rote learning. Overlearn the language form. That means rote learning. Audiolingual method is important in this principle. And some classroom implications are: first, students' interests, academic career goals. If you are a teacher, you have to the focus in this. Second, new topics all the weeks. Associate with something they already know. Uh, Associate the new topics with this. Third, avoid avoid things of rote learning. For example, a lot of grammar, drilling, and/or memorization activities we propose aren't clear, techniques so mechanical. Now we have the third principle in this section, and this is the anticipation of reward. Correct responses. Very good, nice jokes. You as teacher can say that to your students. You can too help they to see clearly why they're doing something and its relevance to their long-term goals in the learning English. You have to create constructive classroom constructive classroom. And the implication of this in the classroom is first, prove it an optimal degree, just enough to keep them confident in their ability, as you as teacher. Second, gold stars and stickers to remember their progress. You can you can have this to the students. And third, what they can do with English where they live and around the world, the academic benefits, jobs that require English, etc. You can explain this to your to your students, and they have some motivation because the world is very big, and if you explain the importance of the English in his day to day, in his or her and their routine, they can more motivation. And if also you have rewards today, like good words, that nice job, and an optimal degree, and stickers and good stars, they always will go remember their progress. 4. Intrinsic motivation. Well, here the learners perform the task because it's fun, interesting, useful, or challenging, and not because they anticipate some cognitive or affective rewards from the teacher. It's something opposed to the last principle. And their needs, wants, or desires within oneself. The behavior itself is self-rewarding. No externally administered reward is necessary. 5. Strategic investment. The role of the learner in the process. The methods that the learner employs to internalize and to perform the language are as important as teacher method, or more so. This principle is focused in the learner totally. Learner's personal time is so important here. Effort and attention in the second language. Uh, the the importance that the learners uh, have to the learn to a second language. If they have they haven't a purpose clear, or a goal for learning that, they don't learn. But if they want learn so much and desires, and they have a goal to learn that, then they learn because they don't import the rewards external. Learning styles alone signal numerous learner preferences that a teacher needs to attend to. The teacher have to mix uh, between visual versus auditory preference, individual versus group work preference. Here, the teacher have to have strategies to all the group. Can you understand the topic? And if the third part of the class there prefers to group work, you can't focus only in that. You have to push to individual task. Learners employ a multiplicity of strategies for sending and receive language to become as successful of this of the learn the language. This principle is a reminder to provide as much attention as you can to each individual student. This as as teacher. Now we have the affective principles, and this is focused in the emotional involvement. Here we look feelings about self, relationship in a community of learners, and about emotional ties between language and culture. The first here is language ego, is the sixth principle. And here, learn to use a second language, develop a new mode of thinking, feeling, and action, a second identity. Warm and fuzzy principle is known by this. All second language learners need to be treated with affective, tender, loving care. The emotions are all in this principle. And some classroom applications are: first, supportive attitude to your students as you as teacher, patience and empathy, because this is a hard process for a lot of people. So the passion and the empathy as teacher is very very important. And second, help such students to understand that the confusion of developing a second self in the second culture is normal and natural process. This is more focused to the English as a second language and not uh, English as foreign language. Okay, now 7, self-confidence. I can do it. You as learner have to remember that always. I can do it. Uh, at the at the heart of all learning is a person's belief in his or her ability to accomplish the task. Now, the classroom applications. Give verbal, as a teacher, give verbal and non-verbal assurance to students. It helps a student to hear a teacher affirm and believe in the student's ability. This is so important because in this way the students feel support. Second, sequence techniques from easier to more difficult. As a teacher, you are called on to sustain self-confidence where it already exists and to build it where it doesn't. Now, the next principle is risk taking. And it last two principles are necessary to the student take this because this is all about risk. So they are ready to try out their newly acquired language, to use it for many purposes, to ask questions, and to assert themselves. And some classroom application as you as teacher is: first, create an atmosphere in the classroom that encourages students to try out language, to enter a response, and not to wait for someone else to volunteer language. It is like push up your students. Second, profit reasonably challenge in your techniques. Not too easy, not too hard. And third, respond to a student risky attempts with positive affirmation. The positive affirmation are all here because the most important when someone is learning a new language is the support that you as teacher can give today. And the other principle is the language culture connection. And here we can start with a quote, and it says, whenever you teach a language, you also teach a complex system of cultural customs, values, and ways of thinking, feeling, and acting. So, this principle focuses on the complex interconnection of language and culture, and it is so important when you are learn English as a second language. Some classroom application as you as teacher is: first, discuss cross-cultural difference with your students. No culture is better than another, but that cross-cultural understanding is an important facet of learning a language. Second, the techniques. It can be activities and materials that illustrate the connection between language and culture. And third, teach your students the cultural connotation. Focus in the sociolinguistic aspects. The students can be affected by the process of acculturation, which will vary with the context and the goals of learning. In many second language learning contexts, students are faced with the reality of adapting to life in a foreign country, complete with various emotions, acculturation, social distance, psychological adjustment. Success to adapt to a new culture is very difficult. So all the support that we can give to the students as a teacher, it is so important to the student. You as teacher have be sensitive with the students. Now, the last one is the linguistic principles, and this is important as the before principles that I mentioned. Okay, the linguistic principle centers in language itself and on how learners deal with these complex linguistic systems. And the third principle is the native language effect. This is so important. The majority of a learner's errors in producing the second language, especially in the beginning levels, stem from the learner's assumption that the target language operates like the native language. So the students can't mix the words, change the words. They are in love with the fake friends that it sounds or writes similar to the native language and really means other thing totally different that they think. So while the native system will exercise both facilitating and interfering effects on the production and comprehension of the new language, the interfering effects are the most salient, and the facilitating don't be treated because you can't fix that the thing that is work with normality. Now, errors are windows to a learner's internalized understanding of the second language, and therefore they give teachers something observable to react to. Now, some classroom application. First, as you as teacher, help your students to understand that not everything about their native language system will cause an error. And second, thinking directly in the target language usually helps to minimize interference errors. Okay, use the dictionary can be useful, but not all the time. You can use the target language is the only way that the students internalize the idiom, and more if they is in the country. Okay, the next principle is the interlanguage. Successful interlanguage development is partially a result of utilizing feedback from others. The feedback is all in this principle. Okay, just as children develop their native language in gradual systematic stage, adults too manifest a systematic progression of acquisition of sounds and words and structures and discourse features. Classroom instruction makes a significant difference in the speed and success with which learners proceed through interlanguage stage of development. In many settings, when we talk or learn or teach English as a foreign language, the teacher is the only person with whom the students have real life contact who speak English. So in English as a foreign language, probably the student don't stay in the country that speak the second language. So out the classroom, everyone talk in his her and their native language. So it's more difficult to their to he to she to the student learn the language, internalize the language. um, it can be an affective and cognitive feedback. And some classroom implication as you as teacher can be try to distinguish between an student systematic interlanguage errors and other errors. Teachers need to exercise some tolerance of an interlanguage forms because each student learned in the different way, so they can mix words and all the say that I say before. Don't make a student feel stupid because of an interlanguage error. Mistakes aren't bad. In the classroom feedback, mistakes are often indicators of aspects of the new language that are still developing. And the last one is be kindness and empathy with the errors to tread truth. Because this is the support that the learner needs. And the last, and I think that is the most important, is the communicative competence, and consists in this combination of the following components. First, organizational competence. This focus in the grammatical and discourse. Second, pragmatic competence. This focus in the functional and sociolinguistic. Third, strategic competence, and fourth, psychomotor skills. In this principle, given that communicative competence is the goal of the language classroom, the learners have to can communicate. This is the goal of all, and this is the goal of learn a second language. In the end of the all, you have to be competent to communicate communicate your ideas with your partners, with your family, with all the world. Okay, some classroom teaching rules. First, grammatical explanation drills or exercise are only part of a lesson. There are two other important components like functional, sociolinguist, strategic, psychomotor, etc. Second, teach the psychomotor skills too. It focuses in the pronunciation because this is so important. To the native people, can you understand you. Third, make sure that your students have opportunities to gain some fluency in English without having to be constantly wary of little mistakes. They can work on errors some other time. Try to keep every technique that you use as authentic as possible. Use language that the students will actually encounter in the real world. And the last one is make sure you are preparing them to be independent learners and manipulators of language out there. Uh, well, this is all the 12 principles to teaching practice. Thank you, and don't forget subscribe to my channel.